The Galactic Council chambers stretched out like a great bowl carved from living stone. Thousands of seats rose in endless circles, filled with beings from every corner of the known universe. Some had scales, some had feathers, some were made of light itself, and somewhere near the bottom, in a small corner reserved for what the galaxy called lesser species, stood Admiral Park of Earth. He had grown used to this place over the past 12 years. He knew the smell of recycled air mixed with alien perfumes. He knew the way conversations would stop when he walked past. He knew the looks, those sideways glances that said everything without saying anything at all. Humans were tolerated here, nothing more. Today, however, felt different. The usual buzz of diplomatic chatter had been replaced by something heavier. Park noticed how the delegates kept looking his way, their crystalline faces catching the light as they whispered among themselves. They were one of the 5 founding races of the Council. Their empire spanned 300 star systems. Their technology had shaped galactic civilization for 10,000 years, and they had never, not once in their long history, been told no. Until last month, when Earth refused their demand. The great gong sounded, and silence fell across the chamber. The council was in session. Park stood straight as the High Minister rose from his seat. The alien was tall, nearly 3 meters of glittering crystal and cold intelligence. His voice echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. The matter before us today concerns the Sol system and its dominant species. The High Minister did not look at Park. It was a deliberate insult. The Empire has requested access to the outer planets of this system for resource extraction. The humans have refused this reasonable request. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Several delegates turned to stare at Park with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. We therefore ask the Council to invoke Article 7 of the Founding Charter, the High Minister continued. This article permits senior races to access resources in systems occupied by developmental species, provided such access serves the greater galactic good. Park felt his hands tighten into fists at his sides. Developmental species. It was the polite term for primitives, for children, for beings too stupid to know what was good for them. The vote was quick. Humanity had no allies here, no friends who might speak on their behalf. One by one, the great powers raised their approval. The motion passed with overwhelming support. Only then did the High Minister turn to face Park. His eyes, if those glowing points of light could be called eyes, held nothing but amusement. You may speak now, human. It is your right, though it will change nothing. Park walked to the central speaking platform. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. He could feel thousands of eyes upon him, waiting for him to beg, to plead, to do what lesser species always did. He did none of these things. My government has asked me to deliver a formal protest, he said, his voice calm and steady. Earth does not recognize the authority of this council to override our sovereign decisions regarding our own solar system. Laughter. It started with the delegation and spread outward like ripples in a pond. Soon, half the chamber was making sounds of amusement in a dozen different ways. The High Minister raised a hand for silence. Your protest is noted and dismissed. You have 60 standard rotations to prepare for the arrival of our extraction fleet. Cooperation will be rewarded. Resistance will have consequences. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice dripped with ancient arrogance. Your species has contributed nothing of value to this council. You exist because we permit it. Do not forget your place. Park said nothing. He simply bowed, a deep, formal bow that the aliens mistook for submission, and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the laughter continued. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Park spent most of it staring out at the stars, thinking about everything he had seen and heard. When his ship finally entered orbit around the blue planet he called home, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hoping. The briefing room deep beneath the city of Seoul was cold and gray. 3 people waited for him there. General, whose sharp eyes missed nothing. Director Lee, whose smile never quite reached his face. And Doctor, who was younger than the others but carried a weight in her gaze that spoke of terrible knowledge. Park told them everything: the vote, the laughter, the 60-day deadline. When he finished, General leaned forward, and their military assessment of humanity. Negligible. They believe we have only basic propulsion systems and primitive energy weapons. They expect no resistance. A long silence followed. Then Director Lee began to laugh, not the mocking laughter of the council chamber, but something darker, something satisfied. 62 years, he said softly. For 62 years we have played the fool. We have hidden our true capabilities behind a mask of weakness. We have let them believe we were nothing. He stood and walked to a control panel on the wall. With a few keystrokes, the room's walls became transparent, revealing what lay beyond. Park's breath caught in his throat. Stretching out before him was a cavern so vast it seemed to have no end. And filling that cavern, row upon row, were warships. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. Designs he had never seen before, sleek and deadly and impossibly advanced. They made a mistake, General said, rising to stand beside him. They assumed that because we were quiet, we were weak. They never considered another possibility. What possibility? Park whispered. Doctor answered, her voice heavy with the burden of what she had helped create. That we were waiting. The elevator descended for nearly 20 minutes. Park watched the depth counter climb higher and higher until the numbers seemed impossible. They were deep beneath the mountains now, in places that no satellite could see and no scanner could reach. Director Lee stood beside him, hands clasped behind his back. His face wore that same knowing smile, the expression of a man who had kept secrets for so long that they had become part of him. When we made first contact, Lee began, we were naive. We believed that reaching the stars meant joining a community of peaceful explorers. We sent our best scientists, our artists, our philosophers. The elevator slowed. Through the glass walls, Park could see the first glimpse of what waited below, massive chambers carved from solid rock, filled with activity and light. They killed them all within a week. They called it a cultural misunderstanding. The council agreed. No punishment was given. The doors opened onto a corridor of polished metal. Scientists in white coats moved past them with quick, purposeful steps. Everything here hummed with energy and purpose. That was when we learned the truth about the galaxy, Lee continued, leading Park deeper into the facility. There is no community. There is no peace. There is only power, and those who have it take what they want from those who do not. They passed through a security checkpoint where guards scanned their eyes and blood. Beyond lay a laboratory filled with equipment that Park could not even begin to understand. We had a choice, Lee said. We could accept our place as victims, as prey for stronger species to exploit, or we could become something else entirely. He stopped before a massive window that looked out over an assembly floor. Workers in protective suits were fitting together pieces of machinery that glowed with strange inner light. We chose to survive. General met them there, her uniform exchanged for the simple gray clothes worn by all facility personnel. She nodded at Park and gestured toward the assembly floor. What you see here is Project Prometheus, she explained. It began 3 months after first contact, funded by every nation on Earth through hidden channels. Its existence is known to perhaps 200 people in the entire world. How is this possible? Park asked. The Council monitors all human technology. They would have detected. They detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, interrupted. Every technological demonstration we gave to the Council used equipment that was at least 50 years out of date. We showed them chemical rockets while we were building faster-than-light drives. We showed them simple lasers while we were developing weapons that could crack a planet in half. She led him to another window, and Park saw the truth with his own eyes. The hangar beyond was so large that it created its own weather. Wisps of cloud drifted near the distant ceiling, and filling that impossible space were warships. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of them, arranged in perfect rows like soldiers waiting for battle. "The Prometheus fleet," said quietly. 300 dreadnoughts, each one more powerful than anything in the Navy. 12,000 support craft. Weapons systems that the galaxy has never seen and cannot defend against. Park felt dizzy. For 12 years, he had stood in the council chambers and accepted their insults. For 12 years, he had played the role of the humble human, grateful for scraps of attention from his betters. And all that time, this had been growing beneath his feet. Why, he managed to ask, why not reveal this years ago? Why let them treat us like animals? Director Lee answered from behind him. Because respect that is given can be taken away. If we had demanded equality, they would have laughed and then destroyed us before we were ready. But fear is different. Fear lasts. He placed a hand on Park's shoulder. We needed time to build, time to prepare, time to become so dangerous that attacking us would be unthinkable. They walked through more corridors, past more laboratories and hangars. Park saw weapons being tested, beams of light that cut through metal like water through paper. He saw shields that absorbed energy and grew stronger from the impact. He saw things that should not have been possible, things that made the Council's technology look like children's toys. Finally, they reached the deepest level of the facility. Doctor waited for them there, her young face lined with exhaustion. "This is the heart of everything," she said, leading them into a control room filled with screens and readouts. The Prometheus array. Through the main window, Park could see a structure that made everything else look small. It rose like a metal mountain, covered in glowing lines and pulsing with energy that made his teeth ache. "What does it do?" he asked. Doctor was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "One shot from the array can destroy every living thing in a solar system. The planets remain, the stars remain, but all life, all of it, simply stops." She turned to face him, and he saw tears in her eyes. 10 shots can end a galactic empire. We could kill 1,000,000,000,000 beings without ever leaving Earth. The weight of her words settled over the room like a shroud. "We built a weapon of extinction," she continued. "We built it because we had no choice, because the galaxy showed us what happens to species that cannot defend themselves." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I pray every day that we never have to use it." Park stared at the array, this terrible monument to human desperation and ingenuity. He thought about the High Minister and his arrogant words. He thought about the laughter in the council chambers. "Will they force us to use it?" he asked. General answered, her voice hard as steel. "That depends entirely on them. We have given humanity a choice that no other developmental species has ever had, the choice to say no and make it stick." She turned to face the window, her reflection ghosting over the image of the array. "In 57 days, the fleet will arrive expecting to find a helpless world ready for conquest. What they will find instead is the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever produced." A grim smile crossed her face. "I almost feel sorry for them." The sky above Earth was empty. No planes flew. No satellites moved in their usual patterns. The great cities had gone silent. Their populations moved to shelters deep underground where they waited and prayed and hoped. General stood in the command center buried beneath the mountains, surrounded by screens showing every corner of the solar system. Her officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency, their faces calm despite the fear that must have lived in their hearts. Lieutenant looked up from her tactical display. "General, long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace distortions at the edge of the system. Multiple signatures, very large." Nodded. How many? 512 confirmed, more arriving every second. The main screen flickered, and suddenly the darkness of space was filled with ships. Warships, their hulls gleaming like cut diamonds, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Each one was massive, great wedges of crystal and metal that had conquered 100 worlds. At their center flew the flagship, a vessel so large it seemed to bend the light around it. This was the pride of the Navy, the symbol of their absolute dominance over lesser races. Admiral Park stood beside, watching the fleet approach. His face showed nothing, but his hands were steady at his sides. "They are broadcasting," reported. "Let them speak." The screen changed to show Fleet Lord, commander of the Armada. He was tall even for his kind, his crystalline body pulsing with colors that indicated supreme confidence. Behind him, his bridge crew worked at stations of light and energy. "People of Earth," announced, his voice echoing through speakers across the planet. "Your time of defiance has ended. Surrender your system's resources and you will be permitted to serve the Empire. You will be given meaningful work. Your children will learn proper civilization." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Resist and witness the consequences of challenging your betters. You have 1 hour to respond." The transmission ended. In the command center, no one spoke. All eyes turned to General. She checked her watch. "They're early, how rude." A few nervous laughs rippled through the room. "What is the status of planetary defenses?" "All shields ready, weapons charged and locked." "And the fleet?" "Standing by. Admiral Park's orders are to wait for your signal." Looked at the screen, at the 500 warships that expected to find easy prey. She thought about all the years of hiding, all the insults humanity had swallowed, all the quiet rage that had built up behind their mask of weakness. "Send no response," she ordered. "Let them wonder." The hour passed in silence. On the flagship, Fleet Lord grew impatient. These primitives should be begging by now. They should be flooding the channels with pleas for mercy. Instead, there was only silence. "Perhaps they are too primitive to respond properly," his second-in-command suggested. "Should we demonstrate our power?" Considered this. A show of force might speed things along. Target an uninhabited region of their ocean. Let them see what awaits them if they continue this foolishness. The flagship's main weapon charged, a lance of plasma capable of boiling away a small moon. It fired, a beam of white-hot death screaming toward the blue planet below. In the command center's voice rang out. "Incoming fire, impact in 12 seconds. Smiled, activate primary shield." Something happened that Fleet Lord had never seen in 300 years of conquest. A barrier of shimmering gold light appeared in the path of his weapon. The plasma beam struck it and simply stopped. The shield absorbed the energy without so much as a flicker. For a long moment, the bridge of the flagship was silent. "Impossible," whispered. "No species has shield technology of that magnitude," our intelligence said. "Fleet Lord," a sensor officer cried out. "Detecting new contacts emerging from behind the planet's moon. Many contacts, very many contacts." The Prometheus fleet rose from its hiding place like a great metal wave. 300 dreadnoughts, each one bristling with weapons, moved into formation with terrible precision. Behind them came thousands of smaller vessels, swift and deadly as hunting birds. Stared at the tactical display. His fleet was outnumbered. His fleet was, he realized with growing horror, completely outmatched. "How," he demanded, "how do primitives build such things?" No one had an answer. Park's face appeared on the screens. His expression was calm, almost sad. "You were warned," he said quietly. "You chose not to listen. What follows is not aggression, it is consequence." He nodded to someone off-screen, and the transmission ended. The battle lasted 7 minutes. They had never faced weapons like these. Beams of focused gravity tore their ships apart from the inside. Missiles that seemed to think for themselves found weak points in their shields and armor. Waves of electronic interference shut down their systems one by one. Ships that had conquered empires were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Crystal hulls that had withstood centuries of warfare shattered like glass. The pride of the Navy died in silence and fire. When it was over, only escape pods remained, tumbling through the wreckage of what had been the mightiest fleet in the known galaxy. Fleet Lord was pulled from his pod by human soldiers in black armor. He was brought before Admiral Park on the bridge of a human dreadnought, forced to his knees before a being his people had dismissed as primitive. Hal asked again, his voice broken, "This is impossible. You were nothing. You were insects." Park looked down at the fallen conqueror with an expression that might have been pity. "No," he said softly, "this is humanity. We were never what you thought we were. We simply let you believe the lie." He turned to look out at the stars, at the debris field that had been an invasion fleet. Now the truth begins. 3 days had passed since the battle above Earth. 3 days since 500 warships became floating graves. 3 days since the galaxy learned that everything they believed about humanity was wrong. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so quiet. Half the seats were empty. Delegations that had always attended now sent only junior representatives or no one at all. The great powers who had laughed at humanity just weeks before sat in silence, their faces showing emotions they had not felt in centuries. Fear, real fear. Admiral Park walked through the massive doors and into the chamber. He did not slow his pace. He did not lower his eyes. The guards who usually checked visitors at the entrance stepped aside without a word. His footsteps echoed in the silence as he crossed the floor. Every eye in the chamber followed him, those who had mocked him, those who had dismissed him, those who had called his people primitive and worthless. He walked past the small platform reserved for lesser species, the cramped corner where he had stood for 12 humiliating years. Without pause, he continued to the central speaking floor, the sacred space where only the 5 founding races were permitted to stand. No one tried to stop him. The High Minister rose from his seat. His crystalline body flickered with colors that meant distress and anger. "You dare." "I dare," Park's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "I stand where I choose to stand. If you wish to remove me, you are welcome to try." The High Minister fell silent. Everyone in the chamber knew what had happened to the last force that had challenged humanity. Park looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes of species that had treated his people like animals. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried to every corner of the vast room. For 62 years, this council treated humanity as vermin. You stole our resources without payment. You mocked our culture without understanding. You violated our sovereignty without consequence. He paused, letting the silence stretch. And when we objected, you laughed. He raised his hand, and holographic displays activated throughout the chamber. They showed the battle above Earth, the fleet arriving in all its glory, and then its complete destruction in 7 terrible minutes. Gasps and cries of shock echoed through the assembly. Some delegates covered their eyes. Others stared in horrified fascination. "None of you are laughing now," Park said. The High Minister finally found his voice. "This is an act of war. The Council must respond. All member species must join forces to punish this act of aggression against—" "Against what?" Park interrupted. "Against an invasion fleet that entered our system without permission. Against warships that fired upon our world." He shook his head slowly. "We did not start this war. You did. We simply ended it." He gestured, and new images appeared, maps showing the positions of every military fleet in the known galaxy. Red dots marked human intelligence assets, hidden observers who had been watching for decades. "Your combined navies number 40,000 vessels. We know where each one is stationed. We know their capabilities. We know their weaknesses." He smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "Did you truly believe we spent 62 years doing nothing?" A delegate, a being of smoke and ember from the far edge of the galaxy, spoke up. "What do you want? Conquest, territory, resources." "We want what we have always wanted," Park replied. "To be left alone, to develop at our own pace, to live without the threat of extinction hanging over us because more powerful species find us inconvenient." He turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire assembly. "Humanity does not desire conquest. We have no interest in ruling others. We have seen what empires become, and we want no part of it." His voice hardened. "But we will no longer be dismissed. We will no longer be threatened. We will no longer accept being treated as less than what we are." The holographic displays changed again, showing something new, a massive structure hidden behind Earth's moon, pulsing with terrible energy. "This is the Prometheus Array," Park explained. "Its full capabilities are classified, but I will tell you this much. One shot can end all life in a solar system. The planets remain. The stars remain. But everything that lives simply ceases to exist." Horror rippled through the chamber. Several delegates made sounds of disbelief. "You're bluffing," the High Minister said, but his voice shook. Park did not reply with words. Instead, he raised his hand again. In Earth's orbit, the Prometheus Array activated. It did not fire, but it broadcast its energy signature across every sensor in the galaxy. The readings appeared on screens throughout the council chamber, numbers and measurements that made even the oldest species tremble. It was not a bluff, the weapon was real, and it was pointed at the stars. "From this moment forward," Park continued, "any hostile action against Earth or its colonies will be met with absolute retaliation, not proportional response, not measured punishment, absolute retaliation." He looked directly at the High Minister. "Your empire spans 300 star systems. It would take us less than a month to sterilize every single one of them. Your entire civilization, your entire history, every child and elder and dreamer among your people, all of it could end because you could not learn to leave others in peace." The High Minister's crystalline form had gone pale. He sank back into his seat, unable to respond. Park's voice softened slightly. "We do not want this. We built these weapons because you gave us no choice. We revealed them because you forced our hand, but we are not monsters. We do not wish to use what we have created." He deactivated the displays. The chamber fell into shadow. "This is not a threat," he concluded. "It is a promise. Humanity is willing to coexist with this council, to trade and communicate and perhaps even become friends. But we will never again be victims. We will never again beg for the right to exist." He began walking toward the exit. At the doors, he paused and looked back. "The choice is yours. You can accept humanity as equals, or you can test us and discover what extinction really means." He stepped through the doors and was gone. In the silence that followed, the Galactic Council, for the first time in 10,000 years, had nothing to say. 1 year had passed since humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. 1 year since the council chambers fell silent with fear. 1 year since everything changed. The Empire was no more. Within months of their fleet's destruction, rebellions had broken out across their 300 systems. Species they had conquered for centuries rose up against masters who had proven to be weak. The great crystal cities burned, and the proud race that had mocked humanity became refugees begging for shelter. Other aggressive empires took notice. One by one, they retreated to their home systems, suddenly discovering the benefits of peace and isolation. Trade routes that had been closed to human vessels for decades now welcomed them with open arms. Diplomats who had once refused to meet with Earth's representatives now sent desperate messages requesting audiences. Humanity had won, but victory, as those who had fought for it were learning, came with a price. Admiral Park stood before the memorial wall in Seoul. The names carved into the black stone stretched higher than he could see, every human killed by alien species since first contact. Scientists, diplomats, explorers, children who had simply been in the wrong place when the galaxy decided to remind humanity of its place. General stood beside him, her uniform crisp despite the cold wind. Director Lee kept his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable, and Doctor hugged herself against the chill, staring at names she had memorized long ago. "We did it," said quietly. "We made them fear us." Yes, Park's voice was heavy. "We did." They stood in silence for a long moment. Above them, the sky was filled with stars that had once seemed so threatening. Now those same stars represented something different, a galaxy that had learned to respect human power. "I keep thinking about the children," said suddenly. "Millions of them, growing up in ruins and refugee camps. Their only crime was being born to the wrong species." "Their leaders made choices," Lee replied. "Those choices had consequences." "Did the children choose?" Turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Did they vote to invade Earth? Did they laugh in the council chambers?" No one had an answer. Park touched one of the names on the wall. "My sister's name is here. She was a biologist on the first contact mission. They killed her because she asked too many questions about their ecology." He traced the carved letters slowly. "For 30 years, I dreamed of making them pay. I imagined standing over their ruins and feeling satisfied." He turned to face his companions. "Now I stand over their ruins and I feel nothing but emptiness. We became exactly what we feared. We built weapons that could end civilizations and used terror as a tool of diplomacy." He shook his head. "What does that make us?" Lieutenant approached them, in her hands. Her face held the careful blankness of someone delivering news she was not sure would be welcome. "Admiral, the Council has sent another message. 12 more species have requested formal diplomatic relations. 5 have asked to join a mutual defense pact under human leadership." "They're afraid of us," Lee observed. "Good, fear keeps people honest." "Does it?" Park took the but did not look at it. "Or does it just breed resentment? The feared the species they conquered, so they crushed them. Their conquered peoples feared so they rose up the moment they showed weakness." He handed the back to. "Fear is a cycle, not a solution." Frowned. "What are you suggesting? That we dismantle our defenses? Let the galaxy see us as weak again?" "No, never again." Park's voice was firm. "We keep our strength, we keep our weapons, we never give anyone reason to believe they can threaten us without consequence." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But strength is not the same as cruelty. Power does not have to mean oppression." He began walking toward the waiting transport that would take him back to orbit, back to the endless work of reshaping humanity's place among the stars. "We have proven that humanity cannot be conquered," he said over his shoulder. "Now we must prove something harder. We must prove that we are worthy of the power we have claimed." Hurried to catch up with him. "How do we do that?" Park smiled, a tired, complicated expression. "By not becoming our enemies. By offering help to those in need, even our former enemies. By showing the galaxy that strength and compassion can exist together." He stopped at the transport's ramp and looked back at the memorial wall one last time. "The believed that power meant taking from others. We have a chance to show that it can mean something different. That protecting the weak is better than exploiting them. That building alliances is better than building empires." The transport's engines hummed to life. "We stand at a crossroads," Park continued. "One path leads to becoming the next great oppressor, feared and hated by all. The other leads to something new, a humanity that uses its strength to create rather than destroy." He stepped onto the ramp. "The choice is ours, and every decision we make from this moment forward will determine which species we truly are." The transport rose into the sky, carrying him toward the stars. Below, The memorial wall stood silent, holding the names of those whose deaths had set humanity on this path. In the Galactic Council chambers, where it all began, humanity's seat had been moved from the corner to the center. But Park knew that a seat at the table meant nothing if you lost yourself in the process of earning it. The galaxy watched humanity now, not with contempt, not quite with respect, but with something in between: uncertainty, hope, fear. And humanity watched itself, asking the only question that truly mattered: what kind of people would they choose to become? The stars offered no answer. That was something only humans could decide. And the decision, Park knew, would take a lifetime of choices, each one a chance to prove that power could serve something greater than itself. He looked out at the endless dark and the distant lights of 100 civilizations. "We have work to do," he said softly. And humanity, for the first time in its history, truly began.